Hello everyone, Chris here. So I just wanted to make a short video about what I find to be the biggest paradox in Dead by Daylight. The eternal war between survivor players and killer players. That is, tunneling versus gen rushing. One of which are perfectly acceptable to most people, and one that is unacceptable by most people. Now, the genuine question is there any difference between gen rushing and tunneling? Now, let's just clarify the terms tunneling and gen rushing for the sake of this video. Tunneling is when a killer purposely and knowingly targets one player in the game to get them out of the match as soon as possible. They will do this by hooking them and then immediately go for them again once they are unhooked. If you do this as a killer, you are going straight to hell, according to a lot of Dead by Daylight players. Gen rushing is not to be confused by a lack of killer pressure. Many times where you think you might have been gen rushed, you haven't. You are just playing a killer with no map pressure, you just had a bad game, or you might have had the wrong perks. When I say gen rushing, I again mean players who purposely go their way to do gens as fast as possible by using items and or perks at their disposal. A group of survivors bringing two Pruda selves is not considered gen rushing. A survivor who brings a commodious toolbox, streetwise, built to last and Pruda self is a gen rusher. A group who brings 2 to 4 toolboxes with brand new parts and a few Pruda self is considered gen rushers. It's a fine line there, but it has to be obvious that they are trying to rush the gens for me to count it as gen rushing. Now, in my experience, brand new parts have been extremely prominent lately. Maybe that has to do with the upcoming nerf and that people just want to spend them while they are still making a bigger impact. I don't know. But the fact is, there is a lot of people bringing brand new parts lately, along with other gen-related perks to make the generators go even faster. And I'm convinced that a group of survivors who is gen rushing to the point where the first gen is done in like 30 seconds or less before the killer can even find the first survivor is having fun. Those 4 survivors is having fun and they are enjoying the game. The killer is probably not having fun. When I play killer and I lose 2 to 3 gens within the first 2 minutes, I lose most of the motivation to play that match. It is not fun. And then you could come up with the classic argument. It's not the other side's responsibility if the player or players is having fun or not. And that is 100% correct. And please, remember that as we keep going, shall we? Now, why isn't it fun? It might be quite obvious, but let's just get into it anyways. If you are a survivor being tunneled, a few things will happen. Number 1, you will get little to no blood points, which feels even worse if you bring a cake or a party streamer with you. To get blood points, you need to repair generators, you need to be altruistic, healing and unhooking other survivors, and you need to be in and win chases. Number 2, you will de-pip. As you won't be able to do anything in that game, you will de-pip on your ranking, which can be quite annoying. Number 3, you will have no fun and you're basically denied playing the game as a whole. That is 3 very good reasons to why tunneling is considered so unfun. And on top of this, it will also affect the remaining survivors as a 3 versus 1 match is increasingly more difficult than a 4 versus 1. So this is something that is unfun for every survivor involved. Now, if you are a killer being gen rushed, the following will happen. Number 1, you will get a small amount of blood points as the match will often be over in 5 to 6 minutes. Number 2, you will de-pip as you won't have time to chase, hook and kill the survivors. One killer emblem is literally keeping as many gens up for as long as possible, so say goodbye to that one. And number 3, you will not have fun and you're basically denied playing a normal game of chasing and hooking survivors. Now, I am very aware that I am playing a slow killer. I am very aware I'm playing a killer who is very punishable for any mistakes done. But this isn't about the difference between the strong killers and the weak killers. This is about the attitude and opinions about gen rushing and tunneling. As I said, gen rushing is perfectly acceptable and tunneling is not. We already established that tunneling is purposely getting a survivor out of the game as fast as possible. Gen rushing is completing the gens as fast as possible. One is acceptable and one is not. And that's the paradox. Now, what is the problem with tunneling? It is insanely unfun for both the victim of the tunneling and the other remaining survivors. I don't like tunneling as a killer and I hate being tunneled as a survivor. That's just facts. It is the most unfun thing in this game, except for maybe a 3-gen skull merchant. But it is effective if you do it right. Just as it's effective bringing gen-related perks and toolboxes with you into the match. And neither is fun for the other side. So why is it that gen rushing is considered an okay thing to do, but tunneling is not? And just to repeat, I am talking about actual gen rushing and not just a result of lack of pressure from the killer. You could argue that tunneling is more prominent than gen rushing, but I would argue otherwise as of right now. After the event, there are so many survivors who have stacked up on event toolboxes, which is the equivalent of a commodious toolbox, and a high number of brand new parts. But at the end of the day, this is just an endless vicious cycle. Survivors gen rush because killers are tunneling. Killers are tunneling because survivors are gen rushing, or a result of a killer's perception that the generators are flying too fast. Now, you might be thinking, what is the point of this video? And to be fair, there is no point, and that is kind of the point. There are no real good arguments of why, according to a lot of players, tunneling should be a bannable offense and gen rushing is okay. Well, you could say that those who play killer do complain about gen rushing just as survivors complain about tunneling, and you are right, that is true. But I have yet to see a killer being a raging lunatic in the endgame chat, other than maybe pointing out that we were in fact gen rushing and it was boring for the killer. Actually, and this is kind of a paradox in a video about a paradox, but I'm also working on a video right now about how to actually gen rush as effective as possible. And I have done around 10 to 15 games of gen rushing where I didn't have a single killer complain in the endgame chat afterwards. On the other side, I've been told to kill myself, wished me and my family getting cancer, or just straight up die on many occasions for situations where players claimed that I was tunneling. And that is a big difference. Now, as some final words, I do think both tunneling and gen rushing is extremely boring. And I acknowledge that it's a situation or playstyle which is unfun for the other side. What I don't agree with is how tunneling is being perceived versus gen rushing. Now, if you have listened through the entire video and really paid attention to my opinion, I am curious to hear your opinions about this. What is the difference between gen rushing and tunneling? Is one a strategy and the other a bannable offense? Are they both equally bad, or are they both perfectly acceptable? I've tried to prevent using the terms survivor and killer in this video and use the words players instead, as that is what we are. Players playing Dead by Daylight. I hate this whole us versus them attitude that ruins all possibilities of a discussion. So set your primary role apart and try to see things from both perspectives as you try to answer these questions. As soon as your argumentation is based around someone being a killer main or a survivor main, I'm sorry, but you have already lost any credibility in your argumentations. But okay, just to summarize to see if we got something wrong. Let's compare tunneling and gen rushing side by side. Gen rushing is purposely and knowingly doing the main objective as fast as possible by using items and or perks to speed up the process. Tunneling is purposely and knowingly doing the main objective as fast as possible by targeting one survivor. Gen rushing will result in the other side earning little blood points and most likely the pip. Tunneling will result in the other side earning little to no blood points and most likely the pip. Gen rushing is extremely unfun for the other side. Tunneling is extremely unfun for the other side. Gen rushing is considered okay and a strategy towards doing the server's main objective as fast as possible. Tunneling is considered toxic, but is a strategy towards doing the killer's main objective as fast as possible. So I'll just end it with these words. Gen rushing is tunneling. Tunneling is gen rushing. I'm having a hard time seeing the difference. But with that said, until next time, take care everyone. Bye bye.